Hello, good day, everyone, and thank you for coming to join us today with the Voices of Adventist Musicians. And we're glad to have you here. Hopefully, everyone has had a lovely Sabbath so far, and we're again happy that you all came in to join us here with our co-host and moderator, Mr. Nerva Altino. How you doing today, brother?
I'm doing good, man. How you doing? Hello, everybody.
Doing well. And we have one of our guests who's already here in the studio with us, Miss Alicia Jones Lumbus. Did I say it correct that time?
Lumbu, Alicia Jones, Lumbus, Lumbus.
Lumbus. I always get it wrong. And you
That's
think
all
I
right.
know it now from the event that we did the last time together with Gail. Yeah, okay. All right. So
That's all right.
I'll get it next time. It's good
That's
to
all
have
right.
everyone here with us today. Again, this is our third session today, and we want to thank all of those who have been joining us and those that will be moving along with us in the future. Just have a couple reminders here, a few reminders. We want to make sure that those who are on the Facebook platform, if you're joining us live, please make sure that you like and share our broadcast on your personal pages. I want to make sure that we get this out to as many people as possible. If you're not already a member on our Facebook page on the Adventist Musician Network on Facebook, please request to become a member of that platform. We would love to have you a part of the group, as well as subscribing to our YouTube channel, which is Adventist Musician Network International. Adventist Musician Network International is the name of the YouTube channel. So if you would please make sure you subscribe and like on that channel as well so you receive our notifications. We're also on Instagram. We're on Instagram at Adventist Musician Network INT. Adventist Musician Network INT. And we're also on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, whatever they call it these days. Our handle there is at Adventist MNI on Twitter. X is our handle is at Adventist MNI, and our final social media outlet we have a LinkedIn page. We are currently not able to stream on the LinkedIn because we have to have a minimum of 150 followers on LinkedIn in order for us to submit our material there. So please, ma'am, please, sirs, if you have time, just go to our LinkedIn page, which is under Adventist Musician Network International, and follow us there so that we'll be able to stream our programs there as well. If that was a lot of information, which it was, just simply go to our Facebook page of Adventist Musician Network under the About section of our YouTube page. You'll see all of that contact information of those various platforms that we're on, so you can follow us on those. So again, please make sure that you can follow us on those various sites and share with others. We would love to have others as well. Um, I had some technical difficulties last week, so it looks like I'm okay this week. So we were not able to uh, engage with those who were chatting on our live, but I think we're good today. So we see Owen and Paul, you're already there. So good evening, brothers, for joining us. We're thankful that you are joining us for today's episode. Today we're talking about the genre battle in our churches, and we have one of our guests who's on the here with us now, Sister Alicia, that is going to help us navigate this conversation today. We had some other guests, and actually, one of them we want to particularly keep in prayer, and that's in the person of Sister Hannah. Sister Hannah Love, I believe it's the last name, Hannah Love. So we want to have our individuals who are joining with us. Please keep her in prayer. She had a medical emergency. So we want to keep her and her family in prayer as we go throughout this program and also continue to pray for her. So, Brother Nerva,
Yes, sir.
we're talking about the genre ballad today. So, if you want to lead us into that conversation, I'm all ears. Let's go for it.
Right. Again, good evening to everyone. Now, this third um, streaming program that we're providing here, our focus is going to be on the genre wars, as I say, that is going on in the Adventist Church. For years, since I was growing up, there has been, such a huge challenge in terms of the musical styles that are presented within our church. The youth are particular. They're drawn to gospel music. You have the older members who are more on the conservative side, and they're drawn to the classical anthems and so forth, and the hymns of the church. Because of this, there seems to be a conflict between the two sides, where many feel that um, the the variety of genres cannot coexist. And me personally, that's something that I've been concerned about, because I have seen where all those genres can merge. And I think that when you are presenting a particular style to your congregation, it is important to look at the demographic of your congregation. And I believe that many times we as artists and musicians fail to do this. We have many, frustrated praise team members who are up there singing their hearts out, giving God praise through worship and praise. Yet the congregation sits there and look at them like they're from Mars, you know. And when you're presenting the hymns and the classical anthems, you have the younger folks who are reluctant to take part in that. And I think that from that respect, I think the reason that is many times those classical anthems are not performed or presented at a high standard. So the youth can see that, they can hear it. Whereas the gospel songs, the gospel selections are presented at a high standard. But as far as the older folks are concerned, they think it's noise. So a lot of time they fail to listen to the messages of the songs. And as a result, we've been at war. So, I'm glad that we have Sister Alicia on with us to help us discuss and perhaps come up with a helpful solution that can at least contribute to change, to the necessary changes that are needed within our church. So, with that said, I'm gonna call on Sister Alicia to introduce herself, and we could begin our discussion.
All right. My name is Alicia Jones Lumbus, and I am currently I'm a music teacher. I direct choir in middle school and high school. I'm also the worship coordinator at my church, West Houston Seventh Adventist Church, and I am presently working on my doctorate and my PhD in Christian worship.
Mm.
And this topic is something that was heavily discussed and presented as well. And we had to write papers on as well. So there is, I believe there is a solution, you know, and the solution does start biblically,
Yes.
um, and that it can work. And I believe that is part of what Paul also wrote in Ephesians and Colossians when he said for us to worship. And I mean, he didn't say worship, but when he talked about encouraging one another with songs, hymns, and spiritual songs, right there is where we can start with a solution, I believe.
Okay. Thomas.
Yeah. Well, I'm very this is one of those topics, like you said, that's kind of been another one of those that's been since the beginning of time as musicians go in our denomination. So I guess let's start from the beginning. How what can we say is an appropriate style of music or appropriate style of music for our churches? What do we feel is appropriate, and how do we qualify it? How do we say what style or genre? Of course, Christian music. Of course, we're not going to do heavy metal or anything like that in church. But what would we say is the appropriate style of music in our churches, and how do we determine what genre or style is appropriate for our services?
Sister Alicia, you don't mind.
Yeah, I believe is first you have to look at the demographic of your church. That's the first. You have to look at that. If the demographic of your church, let's say, is all, I'm just gonna say something completely off, like they're all Asians, okay? You're not going, you're not quite gonna, well, there's some Asians that are into gospel, but you're not going to go right into like Southern style of gospel, just, that way. Um, so it's really, you have to first look at your demographic and know what is, I call it, what is called the heart music of your congregation. And so with once and then once you look at that, also you have to see, I'm sure it's not going to be just one style either. Most congregations, whether no matter what demographic it is, there's going to be several style of music that they're going to enjoy and they're going to want. And so looking at that, then the next step is figuring out how you want to present those different style of music. If your church is mostly, it's a church that has been doing, anthems and hymns, and that's it. That is, and but you can see that there's a new kind of demographic happening here, a new change or people wanting something else. It could be whether it's gospel, whether it's contemporary, whatever it is, whatever they want. Then you have to know how to introduce those kind of
Right.
other style of music gently, where it's not just all up on their faces, and then they feel like they're being threatened. Because usually that's what happens with worship wars. They feel threatened. They feel uncomfortable.
Absolutely. Just on the
Yeah.
text,
What?
sorry to interrupt you, Thomas. Somebody said, Alicia, your mic is a little low. I don't know if the public can hear you well.
Is it?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they say your mic is low.
Okay.
Okay.
Hmm. I'm not sure how to fix that. Maybe I'll speak up louder. Is that better?
I can hear
Yeah.
you.
Maybe.
I don't know
Yeah.
if they can hear
Yeah.
you out there.
Maybe on the
Yeah.
stream. Yeah.
Right.
Maybe.
Okay.
Hold
If
on.
I speak louder, does that help? Whoever said that, maybe I'll just speak louder. I tend to have a soft voice sometimes.
Yeah, because we have you maxed out here. So, um, yeah, maybe if you can just do a little speak up a little louder, maybe that would help us.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Alicia, you did say something that I too have found to be very true. Is when you're making a change in a style of music in the church, is the way that you present that change can affect how it's received. Um, and I think a lot of us we're very much creatures of habit.
Yeah.
So I cannot tell you how many times I've gone to a church and I would do something. We would try something musically, and the first thing that you would hear, of course, is, "Oh, we've never done that before," or "We don't do that here."
Mm-hmm.
Um, so what are some ways, I guess, that we can do that introduction? I know for the most part, when you're doing changes, you have to do it gradual. You can't go in and strong arm people into those changes. We have to do it in the way. And there's something that I do think is really a very tactful way to do so. I haven't mastered this. I don't know if I ever will. Is making people feel like the change was their idea. So I'm still trying to figure out how to do that successfully. But I think if that is the case, so what's some of the ways that we can approach introducing those changes to individuals? I mean, what's some ideas that we can give some of our fellow musicians, choir directors, worship leaders that may be some useful resources or tactics in order to introduce uh, a different genre or a different style of music in the worship service?
I think that there needs to be inclusion. If you are uh, ministering to a congregation that is more on the conservative side, yet you are led to presenting or introducing music that is more on the contemporary side, I think that it's important to include what they know within your set. So if you're going to do a praise set, and you know this congregation loves hymns, include a hymn in the praise set. And when you do that, they may sing along. You get their attention, because once they feel like they're a part of it, then I think that they'll be more open to receive the new genre or new style that is introduced to them. A lot of the young people they love to hear or sing the latest gospel songs. So if the congregation is not familiar with that song, they're not going to want to be a part of it, especially if it's a conservative congregation. But if you include Blessed Assurance within your set while introducing that new song to them, I think that it would be very helpful. Now, I can't guarantee that you're going to get a great response, but I think that there is a greater chance of being received, of that song being received better, and it would capture their attention, and they would feel like they've been ministered to rather than being performed to.
So let's do this. And let's give an example, Alicia, if you could, of your introduction, a new style of genre music to a church, and what was your experience? When you saw, how did you introduce it? Well, let's start. Let's start here. Let's start with the issue. When you went to that congregation, what was the temperature as far as music style was for that church? What observation did you see that you felt would be a successful change or introduction of a different genre or style? And what steps did you take to bring about that change? And did they kick you out? or did or was it a successful transition?
Well, let's start with the church that I'm a member of right now,
Okay.
West Houston. Yes, the church that I attend. So it was very conservative church. It was only they only did hymns. That's it. It was hymns. Um, you know, there was a choir, would be anthems. So that's the type of church it was. It's a very diverse church. I don't know how many nationalities there were, but the last time they counted, there was about like 52 different nationalities within the church. And
Hmm.
so, and also a wide range of ages too, from the older generation to the younger generation. So so it's wide a range of variety of people at the church. I didn't start it off when it came to the change. Maybe when I did direct the choir, I did. So it was through the choir that I would add some gospel in the choir. But I did like salt light gospel is what I call it. So it's like a Brooklyn tab, every you're safe with Brooklyn Tabernacle, that's something else. And also and then some of Richard Smallwood thing, music as well. So and then little by little, gave a little bit of other kind of music. But the last music director was the one who really changed the whole thing of music at our church. And he saw that definitely a change was needed, and he put the praise team together. and he said he used hymns, but he changed the way we sang the hymns. So he did hymns in jazz style, he did hymns with reggae style, he did hymns with Latin style. That's what he did. He changed it. So he used it was through hymns that he changed, the style, and he made the congregation clap through certain hymns that the church was used to dragging it. He made it upbeat. And so through there, did it make everybody happy? No, you had some people who really complained. There will always be a complainer. That's one thing you have to realize. There will always be someone there. That thorn will be there. But we realized the majority of the church was like, all of a sudden, it was like, this is it. This is what we were craving for. This is what we
Mhm.
wanted. And so from there on, you know, after that, it's like then we started introducing other style of songs. Like if it was a contemporary song, we would use one and introduce it and do it each week for that month. So to
Mhm.
introduce the congregation that song instead of giving them too many songs. The other thing is making sure that the team was rehearsed the songs and sounded good. That's another thing. If your team doesn't sound good, then nobody's gonna like anything. So you have to make
Right.
sure that whoever you're putting up there is well rehearsed as well.
Right.
Very well
Yeah,
said.
I think the last point is very key. I know I'm sure that both of you have said this to choirs and singers alike. Um, if you don't sound convincing, and if you don't know what you're look like, you know what you're doing, it's not going to come across well to the audience. So that's very key, being prepared. What Another thing too is, like you said, no, everyone's not going to be happy about changes. Um, Everybody's not going to be happy what the status quo was. Just people are just not going to be happy. Period. No matter what you do. But I think it's a fine line that we need to kind of if we can get to a medium point where we are addressing the needs, at least showing that we're attempting to address the needs of the entire congregation. Of course, you can't touch every congregant in one service. You're not going to do that. That's not going to happen. But of course, if they can see that you are at least acknowledging their presence there in the musical styles. Now, of course, it would be great if we can just go someplace and just do, one style of music and everyone's happy and things are just great. But how do we, um, how do we make that approach? Not only to, because I think, we were talking about, the style of the music of the congregation at large, but also one of the things that I just thought of now is we also have singers to consider. We have singers who may have been accustomed to doing a certain style of music. Their voice has been conditioned to a certain style of music. So
Mhm.
how do we also address that? I do have a West Indie background. My father was from the Bahamas, so there's a certain tone in our Bahamian voices, right? When we sing, that may not be conducive traditionally to certain styles of music. So how do we choose music that not only is going to get the buy-in from our singers as well, that is actually on the front line ministering, but how do we also choose music that they will be able to put their best voice forward, if that's a way we can put it.
Well, if a congregation has the luxury, you have to have people do what they do best. You don't want to have a gospel singer sing "I Will Give Thanks" by Rossini with a choir. That's an operatic selection.
Right.
And you don't want to have a gospel singer singing, an opera singer singing a gospel song that requires a full contemporary gospel sound. So, therefore, everyone has to know their place. And if a congregation has the luxury, they would find a way to allow each talent, if you will, to basically stay within their lane, do what they're most comfortable with. So, and this is why you have to have inclusion. So if you're gonna do the Caribbean selections, use the singers that are most suitable for that. If you're gonna do the gospel selections, use the singers that do that best. If you're gonna do the more classical sounding songs, use the singers that can do that best. But you don't want to have one singer or a set of singers doing everything. It's not that getting out of your comfort zone is a good thing, but I'm pretty sure that everybody wants to present their best. All right, so they don't want to do anything haphazardly. So therefore, if a church has that luxury, they need to know who can do what in that way. I think it'll be very effective from that standpoint.
And and to follow what you're saying, I think is planning ahead. You have to
Yes.
plan. Yes, you have to plan ahead. You have to have your team. Which one, and the voice. Think about the voices for each team,
Hmm.
and as you're planning the music as well. Okay, if you have this team that is more classical sounded, then
Right.
definitely
Hmm. Hmm.
what songs you need to
Yes.
choose for them. So.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So let me ask this: is there a genre within the Christian gospel music under that umbrella that we feel is not um, appropriate for our
I,
music ministry?
I I don't know that we can say that. I don't know we can say that. For me, music is not appropriate when you know the demographic of the church finds that particular genre offensive. That's when it becomes inappropriate. For instance, if you were to go to Ghana, Africa, 70 Adventist churches, you would see people worshiping with tambourines, djembe, all kinds of drums, but they're worshiping, sincerely worshiping. If you were to bring that to the United States, to the more conservative worship services that we have in our church, bring those drums into our church and see what happens. They will kick us out so fast. So, um, music in our church, for me, it's cultural. Okay, it's cultural. So, what we may find offensive here may not be offensive elsewhere. However, if you're an artist and you book to come to go to a particular church, and let's say you're a Christian contemporary artist who does heavy gospel music, and then you go into a more conservative church, you know that church finds that music offensive. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's your job to investigate the congregation, find out what they like, and try to cater to that. Okay, even if you were to include some of your own style, that your more authentic style, try to do some things that cater to them, because we can't forget that this is not about ourselves. We don't play and sing for ourselves, to ourselves. We're ministering to people. Our job is to do that effectively. So if what we're doing is not appealing to them, if it doesn't reach them to their core, it's our job to make sure that we make the necessary changes to appeal to that congregation. Otherwise, politely say, I'm not the right person for this job. So it's not about us. It's about the people that we're ministering to. So music, to me, it becomes offensive when you refuse, reluctant to cater to the needs of a particular congregation. And I find that with a lot of artists, they come there and they know the congregation is somewhat reserved, but they come and they just shove whatever they have down the throats, and then they get hurt. They feel hurt when the congregation refuses to accept it. But it's not their
Right.
fault. People like what they like.
Right. Here's a statement by Hannah. She said, inappropriate isn't the same as not preferred. I say it may not be preferred. However, once it lifts the name of Jesus, it's appropriate. All right. So I'm going to play the devil's advocate because it's 100+ degrees out here in Texas and it's hot. So, so I'm gonna be the advocate today.
I don't know
So,
you, man.
right, right. So I've had experiences in church uh, um, where someone used the music of a secular song. They changed the words, and the words, of course, did refer to Jesus. And they were like, or I guess this was their way of using what was a secular love song. And I'm guessing because I'm not a mind reader, they wanted to make this a love song to Jesus. So they kept the music, changed the words, and those of us who were not completely Christians all week long,
Mhm.
once we heard the music, like, oh wait a minute, that's Atlantic Star, you know. So we knew who the artist was. Now on the flip side, I believe it was BB or CC or maybe it was both of them. They did a song, and it was they're a gospel artist, but they never referenced Jesus or Christ in the song, and people had an issue with that too. So how do we juggle that? How do we address that being appropriate or preferred when you lift the name of Jesus, or a gospel artist that has a in their mind a gospel song, but it doesn't mention or list the name or mention the name of Jesus.
Alicia, you gonna take the floor?
Yeah,
No, I'm gonna say my piece, but
yeah, absolutely.
Um, mm, in taking something like you're saying, like taking a song that is either gospel, I mean, that is popular, but it has, and you change the words and you put Jesus in it and everything. Again, you have to be careful when you do that because at the same time, when you're doing that, where are you taking the congregation? Because are the congregation really going to think about, oh, yes, the words, yes, Jesus, or they're thinking, oh, this was my jam back in the day when and so you have to be,
Right.
it's, you have to be very careful when you do that. There's some songs that, yes, it can pass and you can do that. And it's like, oh, it's not a jam because that song really, let's say it was not a Christian song, but it had some positive. It has positive words in it anyway in the beginning, and so you just add in Jesus. Right now, I cannot think of some songs, but there are songs that have done that, and I think those you can it's fine. But then when you does every song have to have the name of Jesus when you are singing and presenting it? Does the Bible, every Bible verse, have the name of Jesus in it? But who they're when you read that Bible verse, you know who's it talking about. You know what it means. We have so to try and put a standard to everything can become a little bit dangerous, and I think this is where many of our churches fall in that trap. They try to put standards and something to every little thing, and it becomes, like you say, it can become preference when we do that. You know, more like a preference thing than really um, a spiritual thing. Really, it's like we're doing this because we are worshiping with understanding. We're worshiping with truth. We're not doing this as a show, and I'm not waiting for you to entertain me and show you, and you show me what you have. We're actually coming together to worship with in truth and in spirit and in understanding. And I think that's the most important when we're choosing songs and when we are coming together, either to worship with the person or to be the one to give worship.
Amen.
Yeah. Yeah.
I agree with everything Sister Alicia stated. Um, it can be a dangerous thing. It really can. But sampling music is nothing new. Classical composers, which seems to be a very safe genre in our church, uh, does that all the time.
Mhm.
And you have operas that have been written. You have oratorios that have been written that talks about love, that talks about sex. Yet somebody else takes it and apply it into liturgical music. So that's nothing new. However, if you're going to take a secular piece that you know was very popular by a particular secular artist and you want to bring it to the church, I can't say that it's inappropriate, but it is dangerous because if you're gonna do that, you have to remember the congregation or whomever you're ministering to. No matter how many times you put Jesus in there and say Jesus saves it, whatever,
Mhm.
all they're
Mhm.
gonna think about
Mhm.
is that secular version of the song that they've
Mhm.
grown accustomed to.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely.
we can't say it's inappropriate, but I tell you, it's you basically playing with fire. I remember, when Prince died, his famous
Mhm.
song "Purple Rain."
Mhm.
A gentleman was obviously a big Prince fan. Got up in church and talk about uh, praise his name, praise his name. He made a way, he made to Purple Rain. Now I didn't know how to take it. My wife and I sat back and watched this thing. All we could do was laugh and shake our heads because I'm like, this brother did just take Purple Rain and made it to a
Yeah.
praise song. Okay.
Yeah.
So now, if I was not familiar with Purple Rain and I heard that song, I would have been blessed by it. But all I could think about is Purple Rain.
Purple Rain. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so we have to be very careful when we do things like that. I mean, we have a lot of famous gospel artists who will take songs from rap artists, from hip hop artists, and sample them into their own song, and the public enjoys it. Okay,
Right.
so I remember when I was back in college, I used to go to parties. I used to go to a lot of clubs, and I did this until I was well into my early 30s or whatever. So when I wasn't supposed to. Anyway, I remember hearing a song. I'm thinking it's hip hop music, and I get ready to dance to it. It was a gospel song in the club. In the club. So, and I think that's one of the things that has propelled so many gospel artists to, you know, mainstream because they have chosen to go that route. Is it wrong? Who am I to say? I can't judge that. I just know how it makes me feel. All right. So, uh, when artists do things like that, they have to be really, prayerful about their approach and ask God to shield them and allow the words or the message of the song to minister to somebody. Because if they're familiar with the popular version or secular version of that song, that's what they're going to hear.
We have a question that I want to post and see if we can discuss this a little bit. Um, the question is, did we know that most hymns that were written in the 1700s, the tunes came from pubs and poems that were worldly?
Very true. Yes. Yes. Prime example.
So, so with that being the case, I mean, even the I guess he's been called the father of gospel, Thomas Dorsey,
Dorsey, yeah.
who was a jazz musician
Mm-hmm.
that wrote hymns that we sing, and we
Yeah.
we have sanctioned them to be suitable Christian hymns to be sung in our churches. So with that question, and also with that knowledge that came from that question, Nerve, I think you touch on that. How who's to say if it is appropriate now? Who are we to say if it is or isn't? And I would take that question a little bit further. If if we're saying that a certain song or hymn is not appropriate or not preferred in our church because of its sound or who the artist who recorded it is, then how is it that we're able to take other secular individuals who, yeah, of course, in Thomas Dorsey defense, he migrated to the church, so
Mhm.
so he did come to the church. However, a lot of musicians, secular musicians, they actually started out in the church.
Yes.
So if you have a secular musician that started singing in the church, became a secular artist, and then along the way say, "No, I'm going back to the church," they may not be so accepted back into the church that they came from. So as we're choosing music, as we're introducing music to our congregations, um, what do we play it safe and just go with what we know is not going to ruffle any feathers? Or if there's a song that may touch us or we feel could minister to others as he ministered to us, do we take that chance on introducing that music into our services, into our congregants, or do we just stay with the safest route and the route that no one will block the door on the way out, and make sure that we get to our car safe.
Um, I think one of the things we said too, one of the people's questions about the hymns, taken from the pubs and everything back in the 1700s. That was done for a reason, for a purpose. The people, when they did that, the people they were bringing the hymns to were not literate. Not all of them could actually read. And so they wanted people to sing because back then it was just those who were educated and knew the language, like the Latin language, or then they were the only ones that could actually sing the songs and know the songs because they were educated in that area. But the regular folks were not. And so they wanted the regular folks to to sing as well, to worship as well. So this is why, they brought the words, the songs that they already knew, and just put, you know, um, Christian lyrics, Jesus lyrics in it, so that they could easily sing and feel comfortable in singing and just get the church singing. Notice the
Mhm,
word was to get the church singing and worshiping. And I think that's an
mhm,
issue with today. I think today we are so focused on creating something new and being so I hate to being innovative, or what can we do different, how can we all get the people really into the church and really into worship. We're now becoming almost those marketers. We're trying to market, we're trying to sell something, and forgetting that Jesus does not need selling. That's one. He does not need that. But yes, as a create, we're all creative beings. We need something creative. Sometimes we need something new. That's normal because Jesus is our creator. And one thing we have to realize, Jesus also, everything he did wasn't safe. There were
mhm,
times that things he did rock the boat, but when
mhm,
he rocked the
mhm,
boat, it was to bring people to Christ, so that so that the people could feel comfortable to come to Christ. That's why he needed to rock the boat. So when we're rocking the boat in the churches, we have to first think, why are we rocking the boat? First of all, is it because we're trying to do something that is our preference, something that we want to do, because I'm tired of this music. I want something new. I want to sing what's in today, because we all get there, or are we doing it because you see the congregation are in need of something? There's something missing within the service and the worship service, and you prayerfully ask Christ, lead me, show me what needs to be done. And there are times he's going to say, yeah, you need to rock the boat, and when you do it, you have, then the next step is finding, asking God to just lead you and how to do it where it doesn't offend people in such a way that it puts you in such a difficult situation, not in a good situation. You don't want to do it in a way that it pushes people away and then you just lose the battle. So you have to do it in a way that, again, it's led by God. You were led by God, because once you're led by God to make that change, yes, you will rock the boat, but God will continue to make that pathway for you so that you can, there is actually a change that is needed that will happen within the worship service.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, there has to be a purpose for wanting to do something like that. Me personally, I'm not that bold. Certain, I mean, I may be bold, but I'm not that bold to try and do that. I pay attention to the congregation and what their needs are. So, what I would suggest is, as Sister Alicia said, be prayerful about it. Okay. Uh, at the same time, target people that are in need of that, where they won't be so offended by a particular approach if you want to introduce something like that to them. If a congregation, you know that that is not their preference, uh, look at the demographic and look at where the majority is and see where they are. Now, I had said to you, Thomas, about new position that I've I started working as music
Mhm.
director at a church, and before I got there, they did
Hmm.
a survey with the congregation for the music ministry.
Hmm.
What are your preferences? How much of the pipe organ music do you like? Would you like us to sing less hymns? Would you like us to sing more contemporary
Hmm.
songs? Do you want more of the classical postludes? Do you want more hymn improvisations? Like, there was a survey.
Hmm.
I had this survey. I had to study this survey so I could know exactly what I am getting myself into as music director. Before I started working here. So I think it's important to study the congregation and, as Sister Alicia said, see where the needs are and be very prayerful about your approach before you make a
Hmm.
very bold move that would get you thrown out of the church. You
Right.
see? Yes, yes. So the whole thing is, again, it's ministry. It's never about us. All right. It's about the people that we are ministering to. Our goal is to try and bring them closer to Christ. And if we're offending them with what we're presenting, then our job would have been done in vain. So therefore, we want to make sure that we're not there to try and perform to them and show how well we can sing, how virtuosic we can play, but try to minister to them in a way that is effective, that will draw them closer to Christ.
It's interesting you
As
say this.
musicians, I think that there's something that we sometimes miss as musicians. I know we're talking about the challenges of introducing, in this particular conversation, of introducing change or new genres or types or styles of music into the worship setting. But what if we're in a situation where we should make a change? how do how is it that how can we refrain from doing what, because I think it's kind of natural for us to go into a situation and say, hey, y'all been doing this for 20, 30 years, let's do something else. But is there a time as musicians that we, as it has been stated, you have to study your congregation. You have to know, as Nova just said, which I think is an amazing idea. They actually did a survey of the congregants and asked, "What do you want, or what do you not want?" That's that makes sense, perfectly good sense. So, what happens as a musician when we're in a situation where we may want to make a change, but we shouldn't make a change.
Well, I think that when it's time for change, you will know. How will you know? You will see a huge decline in your congregation, and either older members are leaving, uh, people aren't attracted to the church anymore, and the number of your congregants have dwindled. So, excuse me. So, therefore, at that point, a change is necessary. You have to look at uh, what kind of culture, in terms of the congregation, that you want to attract to the church as a leader. Now, this is for the pastors. So you have to decide, okay, you've lost most of your older members. Now it's time for a change because you want to attract new members, particularly young people. What do the young people like? What kind of music appeals to them? And you have to create those resources and presentations that will attract them. Music and great sermons attract people. So, yeah, when it's time for change, I think you will know.
I I think there should always be room for change,
Yeah.
even when maybe the church is like, we're good how we are, you know.
Yeah.
But I think there's always room for change because there's always that one person. And I don't like to say the majority. What does the majority say? Because that's not how Jesus did his ministry. It wasn't about the majority. It was even, it's more like, even if it was one person, what was the needs of the people? So I think balance, that's why it's very important to be balanced in your church, in your music, in your worship. In other words, variety. I think it's important to do that because when you have variety, there you will always target someone. At the church there's more room of targeting somebody, bringing somebody in to worship. And that's what's important. Change meaning, like, it could be like one time, just, hey, for the church, it could be a church full of senior citizens, and their needs, what they worry about, what makes them happy. So you think of the song, let's see, one of the new songs, I Trust in God. The words on it has starts with blessed assurance, but it's a whole different, it's the melody is different,
Hmm.
the rhythm is different. But you can just present it like, the other day I heard this song, and you can say to them, these are the lyrics of the song. Doesn't it ring to you? And like, of course they will ring. Yes, yes, it rings to me. It rings to us, right? How when we times when we had to trust in God, and you can, it's like, when are times that you had to trust in God? Could it be when you didn't have medication? Could it be, whatever it is? And so, and then you lead into the song gently, starting with you can either start chorus, or you can start with the verse, which is starts with the blessed assurance, Jesus is mine, which everybody knows. And that's one way that you can you can add a little bit of change. It says in Psalms several times to sing a new song. Even the Bible
Mhm.
says, do something new.
Yeah.
You know, let's not keep it the same all the time, because God, He's the creator. He created us to also do something different each time, do something new. He didn't create us to be the same all the time. And because not even His ministry is the same all the time. So I think, change. There should always be a little change, of some sorts, no matter what kind of church it is.
I think you have touched on two very important points. Number one, engaging the congregation.
Mm-hmm.
That is so important. I think that some praise team leaders sometimes miss the point. It could be, due to their personalities. They just want to sing. They don't want to put themselves out there like that. So some choose not to do it. But if you engage the congregation, like you stated, a song like "I Trust in God," tie that to the hymn that they know, "Blessed Assurance," because the lyrics are similar to when the song first starts. That would capture their attention. That would really capture their attention, and you could feed them the words to the chorus. Because I think that a lot of time congregants, they don't like, the only time they really get to be a part of the service is during the hymn singing. They don't. A lot of them don't like praise and worship because they can't. Not only because they can't relate to the songs, they don't know the songs.
Hmm.
So if you engage them, start by teaching them the chorus, just a few words of the chorus, and say, okay, join us when we start this chorus. You have a whole lot of people joining. Now you're never gonna please everybody. You're gonna have some reluctant people, all right? I see it all the time, and I make jokes about my fellow Caribbean men. No one is more reluctant to be, to take part in praise and worship than Caribbean men. They're not gonna be a part of it, but that's just their nature. It doesn't mean that they're not enjoying the worship service. They just want to sit down and enjoy it. That's them, and that's fine. But engage the congregation, and I think that you will see a world of a difference, and them participating. And also, I can talk about what we do at my church. For years, we have, my church is somewhat. They've always been on the conservative side, so we have been trying to get them to open up more, to praise and worship. I mean, it can be a struggle at times, but now I'm starting to see that they're more open. They're taking part in praise and worship, and we for years we have needed a new classical organ, and so all that was being played during the church was the Hammond organ, the keyboard, and so forth. We have a band, and we have praise and worship. Even when we do the hymns, we'd have a band play the hymns. So now that we have this brand new classical or Rogers organ, they always get one good hymn every Sabbath. That's all they need. Because they get that hymn, either myself or my assistant organist will play that hymn. We could do praise and worship. I haven't heard one complaint about praise and worship since we've gotten that organ. Before it was, oh, we might miss my hymns. We don't have, just drums in the church, and everything doesn't need a drum. Just I've heard it all since we've gotten that organ, and including that one good hymn, that opening hymn on Sabbaths, where they get it and they sing together. I have not heard any complaints about praise and worship, and we still do praise and worship. Now, does everybody take part? No. All right. But I'm starting to see uh, a more willingness, from the congregants to be a part of praise and worship. Praise teams are singing, and they are people are standing up and giving God praise and singing along. Even if they don't know the song, you could tell that they are in a worshipful mode, uh, uh, where they are receiving the messages through song. So therefore, if you two things, if you engage the congregants, and if you give them something that they can relate to, you can't please everybody, but I think that you will find more people that are willing to receive something different in worship.
And sometimes you have to educate your congregation.
Hmm.
You do. There are times you do have to educate them a little bit. Sometimes you have to let them know, like, okay, now it's the younger generation's turn,
Yeah, yeah.
for
Let
the
them lead.
song.
That's absolutely.
They have to now. Okay,
Yeah.
but it's important also to keep things of theirs. I think sometimes the worship wars have to do with people are afraid that, oh man, they're going to take away all the hymns once the praise and worship starts,
Hmm.
and all the hymns are gone. And then all you have is just praise and worship, or just, whatever it is the style. And that is just that one style. Because to be honest, that has happened to
Yep.
some
Many
churches.
churches. Yeah.
Many churches that have done that. And I think it's sad that that has happened, because the Bible says, and I believe, just like, I keep going back to Paul, in Colossians and Ephesians, to sing, encourage one another in psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. I believe that is saying to keep that balance, because this style is not going to hit, get it for everybody. This each style, one style is not going to hit it for everybody.
Mhm.
But when you place variety,
Did she freeze up a little bit there?
that's going to
Yeah.
be
Sure.
Okay.
encouraged. When it's
Okay.
done right, definitely someone will be encouraged. That's why variety is very important within our
Very
church.
much so. Very much so.
So is it feasible? Would it make sense to say, maybe suggest to our pastors or leadership, maybe having different services? Maybe have a traditional service, a contemporary service,
I disagree.
a hip hop service.
That's
I
more work for me,
mean,
man.
I disagree, because that what's
could
happening
could
is,
could, could that?
I hope my pastor's not listening to this, but that's more
I
work for
think,
me.
I think when you're
Right, that's
doing
true.
that, yeah, I think when you're doing that, you are dividing the church. And part of being a Christian is we have to know how to get along when it's not even my preference.
I
We
agree with
have
that.
to know how
Yes.
to love somebody
Yes.
else's worship, even if it's not my style.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
have to learn how to be patient.
Yes.
Okay, I really don't like, no, first of all, we have to learn how to worship even when it's not your style of music. I don't like this style, but I love the words. I get the words. The words does apply to me, so I'm going to worship those words.
Right.
Though the drums, that guitar, whatever is getting on my nerves, or for some people is like, ugh, that organ. I'm not into organ, but I'm going to worship those words. What it's saying to me, because it's not about
Mhm.
me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about me, and that's the problem. When we put, okay, we're going to have a different service. This service is going to be all contemporary. This service is going to be the hip hop service, whatever it is. Then that's when you're playing. This is when you have made worship an idol. You have made worship an idol, because it's all about you, not about God. Is the style of music that you're worshiping. You're not worshiping God. And so when we, it's very divide. I mean, putting those styles is, again, is adding division. And we're here on earth to learn to be united. We're here on earth as a Christian. We have to learn how to worship together, because when we go to heaven, we're going to be worshiping
Right.
together.
When we all get to heaven, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. We're going to be worship together. There's not going to be a hip hop
Right.
side. There's going to be a non Christian hymn side. It's not. So we need to learn to worship together here, because this is our rehearsal. And I think people forget that when we go to church and when we worship, we are rehearsing for the ultimate worship. And that's when Jesus comes.
So here's another, I guess, point that's been made. Here, she said, also it matters that the congregation have a relationship with the musicians. So if we're saying that the congregation has to have a relationship with the musician, does that mean that, uh, is that being stated that if we are interacting more with the congregants and with the musicians, then we have a better feel of what the congregation may want as relates to music? Or are we saying that if the congregations or the congregants have a relationship with the musicians, then they would be more, um, receptive to what's being introduced musically?
Um, I have heard this before in the workplace, with you have people in the corporate world. That is, I hear that you have people who They go to picnic, company picnics and things like that, different events where people can interact with each other outside the confinement of a workplace where everything is intense all the time. So when they engage each other in a more relaxed atmosphere. So as a result, they get to know one another on a personal level. Um, Perhaps that could be uh, helpful. When the congregation knows you personally, they'll be more open to the music director or the praise and worship team or whatever, to accept what is being offered. I do think that's a good point. Um, is it a guarantee? I don't know. I can't say that. Again, I think engaging them is another way that could be quite effective. But to get to know them on a personal level, it's not a bad idea. But one thing about musicians, many musicians are, at least I find that, are introverts.
Introverts.
Yes,
Yeah, introverts. Exactly.
It's true. Many musicians are introverts. It
they're
is true.
introverts. They don't
It
want to
is,
be bothered.
Yeah, very much so.
Literally, yeah,
but we have to remember as musicians that we have a responsibility,
we do.
and the
Yeah.
responsibility is the congregation.
Hmm.
And just like the pastor has to have a relationship with the congregation for several reasons, so do we as musicians. We have to as well because we're preaching too.
Yeah.
We're also preaching. We're also
Mhm.
putting together a sermon. Our sermon that goes along with another sermon. There's a speaking sermon and there's a music sermon. And yes, we do need to have a relationship with the congregation because we also it's sometimes it's nice to say to somebody, hear somebody say, maybe someone is hurting and you talk to that person, they're hurting, you found out that maybe somebody just passed away or they lost something, you find out about them. So the next time you're trying to think of what are we going to sing this next Sabbath, you think about that person and you feel like, I know exactly what he or she needs to hear, and then you choose a song, there that
Yeah. Yeah.
can help that person in the church go through what they're going through, and so yeah, it's very important. And not only that, but maybe somebody would say, I love this song so much and I never hear it. Can you one day sing this song? That's how you know what people want as well,
Yeah.
what they
Yeah,
want to
very
hear,
true.
and you can do that, and
Yeah,
yeah. So I think that's very important to have a relationship, some kind of relationship with the congregation is important.
that. Yeah, at least what you're saying is very, very interesting. I had an experience, some years ago, decades ago, probably now, where I had a choir, and mostly we did gospel, um, traditional contemporary gospel. And there was a lady in the church, one of the members, that had a song that she wanted the choir to sing. The song, it was "My Help" by Brooklyn Tab
Okay.
choir, and that particular style I had not done with that choir. It wasn't so much of a stretch for us. It just wasn't a preference
Hmm.
of for that sound. That wasn't the sound I wanted that choir to have. So oddly enough, she had gone to another choir director in the church and asked them first if they could do the song. The choir director told them, "No, we ain't doing that. No, no, we're not doing that." We actually did the song, and honestly, um, that song probably was a song that I actually enjoyed more teaching, and we're actually ministering that song, even though it was the furthest song from my thinking. So my question at this point is, as musicians, as we have this juggling of what to sing or what to introduce, should we be open? Because I think Nerva, you mentioned the church that you're at where they did a survey. So would it make sense as a musician, as a choir director, as a worship leader, to actually ask our congregants what do you want to hear? What do you have a song that you would like for us to do? Would that help to maybe bring about a lowering of the temperature of the genre war in churches, or the struggle that we may have seemingly between the congregants and the music ministry at times because they don't like what we're doing, so to speak. And we're just like, okay, we're trying to minister to you, maybe in a different way, but would it make sense, or would it be a good practice from time to time just say, hey, if you all have a certain style of music or a song that you want to hear, hey, bring it to the table and let's talk about it.
I think it would be great practice to do that, because it's again, it's not about us. It's about the people we're ministering to. So if they are given the opportunity to let their voices be heard in terms of their preferences, what would minister to them, I think it would make a world of a difference. So absolutely, I think that should be done.
Mhm. Yes.
So if go ahead, Alicia, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying. So if that was something that we did put into practice on a more consistent basis, just asking congregants, hey, if you have a song that you'd like to hear, um, submit it to the music department. We'll go through it and no, and go from there. Would that possibly? I know, as you mentioned, sometimes when we do praise and worship, you have people who just sit there and look at you. If they hear their song being done on a Sabbath morning, do
Hmm.
you think they'll still sit there?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Like yes, I think the part of the problem is familiarity. Many times they don't know the
Yeah,
songs, they don't know the words, so they just sit there and just probably praying that until it's all over, we'll go to the next segment of the service. So,
right.
but if they hear something that they like, it depends on the individual. Some people might stand up and raise their hands and worship. Some others will sit there, kind of nod their heads, but they'll
Yeah.
certainly be more engaged to a particular song that they're familiar with or like. But if they don't know the songs, I don't think that they're gonna care about that aspect of the service in terms of the music.
I'm going to go out on a limb. So we have the master's degree and the doctoral candidate here on the panel. So music and I think also in ministry, we have to understand and come to the realization that it's just as much as a mental psychological thing that we have to interact with our congregants as much as just doing the music. So, and I said it because of just kind of the conversation we're having now. If someone feels like their song is being done, that does something to them psychologically. I'm being heard, and it could be someone that there may be other ministries that they go to or have gone to and may have been turned a deaf ear. But I went to a music staff and said, "Hey, I like this song." It may not have happened, and as Karen said, you can ask, but don't promise to do it. But if you do choose to do that selection, when someone feels like they've been heard, when someone feels like they're not singing the song, they're not playing the song, but that's my song. So now they feel like they're a pseudo member of the music ministry by way of you're doing my song. That can cause and create a change in the mentality of that person. That person may now say, hey, whereas I didn't care much about what y'all did musically, now that relationship that was mentioned earlier, now we have a relationship with each other. We may not speak all the time, but you
Mhm.
did my song. You my friend.
Yeah, yeah.
so so how can we do different things that, not to say we want to play mind games with people or anything of that nature, but how can we engage individuals um, without necessarily giving up any integrity in what we're doing as minstrels in the music ministry for our churches?
Well, you have to know what to accept and what not to accept. You can't accept every song that everybody requests because
Correct.
some songs may not be appropriate for that particular congregation. But if you make it a priority to honor some requests, if not most, uh, I think that it will certainly increase the interest of the congregants in terms of certain aspects of the service where music is involved. So, yeah, it makes them feel honored in some way. They're like, yeah, they sing my song because I requested that song, and
Mm-hmm.
and they feel special, and it's good to make people feel special. I have
Mm-hmm.
um, some members at my church. Sometimes I could say to them from my choir, even I say to them, okay, what hymn do you want to hear next Sabbath? All right. As long as the hymn, and they say, well, I want to hear this, and that. Okay. All right. And I even have some of them now. They tell me how to play the hymn. Well, I want to see more of the footwork at the organ, so things like that. But these people,
Right.
I've gotten very close to them because they have felt, pretty special that at the fact that I would honor their request, and I could say to
Right.
them, okay, okay, I can't come up with something to play for post. What do you want to hear? All right, just say play this. I'm like, okay, good choice. There you do it. And I've had this conversation during service after church, and others around them have heard those conversations and they're like, well, I want to know, well, can you play this with me? I said, okay, sure, and I do it. And now, whenever I go to church, I have a set of people. Well, they have been around for the summer, but they sit at the organ side because they want to hear what I'm going to do because chances are I might play a song that they want to hear.
Right.
So I think that's very important. That's a great point to touch on.
Yeah, it's very important too to also go to people who are also of different cultures as
Yes,
well.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of like one of the things we've done like songs in Swahili also.
Mm,
We've incorporated a praise and worship song in Swahili with movements and everything. We've done that. And it was interesting to see, those who knew the songs, they lit up, and enjoyed it. And another time, we had one of my praise and worship person, she incorporated an African praise song, Nada. And she incorporated that song. And so those that were West African or Africans, they they all they sang along, and those that were not, they went ahead and learned it too, and they were singing along, with her as well. So it's simply, and the way that it was done too with them. I know with whenever I incorporate other languages or other songs, I go to those people and I ask them, how do you pronounce it? Send me a link of
yes.
the song, teach me how it goes. And they feel like it does something for them. It really does. And then they appreciate you more. They're there for you more. They respect you more for
Hmm.
that, and you see that they also, support your ministry as well.
Yes.
And so it's, you always have to remember that as worship leaders or musicians, you're doing this not only for God but for the people.
Hmm.
For the people, meaning you are bringing them up to God. You're helping them worship as well. So, you have to put yourself aside, your preferences aside, all of that. And you have to think about who you are serving to. Yes, you're
Yes.
serving God, but you also have to think about your
Yeah.
congregation.
Yeah.
Even if it's one person, if you have one
If it's one,
person that
yep.
speaks Portuguese, hey, we're
Hmm.
going to do this here. There's a little part in Portuguese, and you can bring
Hmm.
that person up to help you say that part in Portuguese, just
Yeah.
something like that,
Yes.
and that's part of engagement and
Yeah.
inclusion, and that's very important in worship services.
Very true.
So, Alicia, I'm not sure if you heard this aspect of this podcast when Norva first brought this podcast idea. One of the things that we discussed that we want to discuss some of the concerns of Adventist musicians in our that we go through but we also want to come up with some viable solutions to some of these concerns and issues as well. We just want to talk about what the issues are and then just leave it there. So one of the things that just listening to both of you speaking about this, I know both of you are definitely are familiar with this, where we have uh, music workshops for our music departments or ministries at our churches. Is it possible? Because I know it has been mentioned throughout the conversation about teaching, the congregation, giving them more knowledge. What do you think in regards to, instead of having a music workshop for strictly the music ministry, have a music workshop for the church congregation to use that as an opportunity to teach them about various genres of music within the Christian music. Do you think that would kind of help bring along some individuals that may think that some things should not be done uh, in our various music ministries?
I think education is very important, and that I think it's something that what you're saying is able to do that. But if you're doing that, you also have to make sure that you know what you're talking about as well. That you have studied it, you know this, like you know what you're going to present. You're ready for whatever's going to come up, and you're ready to know the answers spiritually, biblically, and also prophetically. I say that, because we know our church folks love to bring, prophecy into, into the church music wars and the worship wars. And a lot of them are actually misconceptions and misunderstandings as well.
Right.
So,
Right.
so you have to be very well prepared. And I'm going to go a little bit deeper I in that what you're saying, Thomas, is that our institutions have to be prepared. In other words, we don't have in our institutions, as far as I know, I could, if I'm wrong, praise the Lord. But as far as I know, we don't have in our institutions anything like even a degree in that area. We don't have a
Hmm.
certain class on biblical worship. What does it look like? Even for the pastors and for all music majors, I think everybody's going to music degrees. I think they should know, what does biblical worship look like? What does it mean to, bring what we're just talking about? How do we bring change into that church? How do we bring variety into the church? How do we engage our congregation to sing something new? How do we make sure that everybody's involved? There's a lot of things that our institutions, I don't think they even prepare many of our pastors for. And so our pastors, they come as well, not knowing, they come with ideas in the church, like, hey, I want this, because they're seeing what's done in YouTube, but what other churches are doing, and without actual knowledge of what is the best way to lead worship in our church, in this church, because every church is different. I can't do what I see on YouTube, on, let's say,
Right.
you know,
Right.
whichever church that is
Right.
real popular. I can't. So I can't, so like I can't bring Oakwood to my church, as long as
Right.
I graduated from Oakwood, but I would love to bring, Oakwood to my church, but I cannot do that because that's not the what is the word I'm looking for, but it's not only the demographic, but that's not who my church is. Period.
Right.
So it's like when you're doing this, you also have to one is yes, education is very important in the church. Doing music workshops in our church, but you have to do it in a way that it's not. You're not trying to put your preference in. It has to come biblically. You have to make sure you know the prophecy as well on what she was trying to say and the history behind it too. Because there's so many, when I say there's so much misunderstandings in our church, there's so many pastors out there that are saying that this music is wrong, this genre is being, we shouldn't be clapping in the church. And to be honest, I'm like, you're getting this information from the wrong places.
Right.
It's not even biblical found.
Right.
So if you're doing this, you have to make sure that you are well studied. There are many books out there, and you have to be very well prepared in doing that. But going back, our institutions also need to prepare not only our pastors but our musicians.
Yeah, it's very. I think it's a reoccurring theme, Nerva. I think that we've been hearing for the past, well, now today 3 weeks. And you said it, Alicia. It's about training and educating. Um, and you also say, it's we've been, for the most part, institutionalized in our style of worship. Um, Remember you said before, if you go to a church, we have worship service, maybe in an African culture, and you bring that same worship here, um, you're gonna have a problem, you know.
Yeah.
And one thing that I've seen as well is, where we have in our churches we have a lot of West Indians and different cultures in our church, and it always and I watch people. I think I got that from my dad, and I see it, and I'm like, okay, I know you from a culture that I mean, when y'all into music, I mean, the drums are going, the movement is going, and you come here and you're sitting in church and you're like, no, don't play too loud, don't be loud. I'm like, where, what happened? you know, we came across the water and everything that we did there, we just forgot on the. I mean, I'm like, did the ocean wash away everything that happened before? So it's like the miseducation of us as far as our worship style goes. And I think, at the end of the day, we have to be true uh, to the worship that God has given us, into us. Um, and then, I'm not a Bible scholar, but I'm pretty sure David had a list of instrumentations that he said that you should praise God with. And it's like everything on that list, we were like, well, no, you're not doing that here. It was okay for David, a man to God's own heart. David could do that. It was fine for him. But no, we're not doing that because that's not sacred. That's not holy. That's not Christ-like. So I think, one of the things that is a reoccurring theme that we've had, mentioned throughout these podcasts, is that it's the education that we have to get to. Even the Bible says, "So as a man thinketh, so is he." So if we can get to the point where we can educate individuals and let them know, hey, it's okay. The drum's okay. You can be. It's okay to clap your hands in church. You can stand up. If you want to lift your hands, it's okay. But a lot of these things, I think we have. It's been so frowned upon that in the music ministry we're really reluctant and kind of hesitant to do certain things because we know, okay, after service I know I'm going to hear it, or even in rehearsals. I know for those who are in rehearsals or in the music ministry, they may not like certain things, they may not cater to their liking, or we know we're going to hear from them. So, um, I think we have a lot of work to do,
Yes.
but the thing is, when they're working, it has to be consistent. As music ministers, worship leaders, if we're not consistent in first of all, consistent in our prayers and our time with God, so that He can show us what we should be doing to give us direction, we have to be consistent in that regard. And then in our approach to the music ministry and how we're teaching those who are in the music ministry as well as our congregations, we have to be consistent. Uh, we can't be weary in well doing. We have to continue to push those things ahead. So I'm interested to hear, Alicia, what's some other things that you feel as we come to our final moments in this podcast today, what are some things that you feel that we can do that will continue to solidify our ministries and maybe introducing some changes and maybe kind of addressing that genre changes.
I think first of all, the ones who are leading in this ministry need to understand why they're doing it. That's first. You need to understand why you're leading. You need to understand what's actually your role, you know, understand what it is. And then at the same time, the songs that you're using, why? Why are you using those songs? Why do you want this style? Why? That's very important. And the reason I'm saying that, because if somebody comes at you, then you have your biblical answer. You have your
True.
answer. you know and also it's important that you have your pastor's support as well,
Yeah.
because
Mhm,
if
mhm,
somebody
mhm.
comes to your pastor is also well prepared, and can say what they have to say to back you up. So it's very important also it's important to have the relationship with the pastor, and both of you understand why you're doing what you're doing. So
Right.
because there will always be some, like I said, there was always a complainer, there's always a thorn, you know,
Right.
and you
Hmm.
just have to be ready for those in a loving manner, ready to give the answer in a loving way to that person, and that way, it doesn't become a battle, doesn't become a fight, because it's not a time to argue about it. It's just a time, sometimes it's a time just to drop a little verse, and that's a teaching moment, and smile and just change the subject, so it doesn't go into the battle. But a lot of times, after a while, that person, you know, hear that verse and might click, and they're like, oh, might click. Um, but that's it's very important to understand. The first step is just understand what you're doing and why you're doing it, and knowledge. Leading with knowledge is very important.
Yes. There's
Absolutely.
a statement here from one of our audience members, Owen, that says the thing we need to realize is that we have more in common than we have differences. If we can focus on the commonalities
Yeah.
more, the church as a whole will be better off.
Yeah.
And that, man, that is that's a mouthful. Yeah,
But I think
yeah.
too, and commonalities. That's something that I kind of, I don't want to like, because I think one of the things about our churches is that we focus on everybody having to like think alike, be the same, all of that. And I think the church needs to learn to appreciate our differences, you know. And I think that is something that our church also needs to. We also have to kind of introduce slowly, like it's okay to have to do things differently. It's okay that we, like this person likes this and this person likes this and you like this, but we can still worship with
Together.
our different,
Hmm.
Right.
preferences. We can still do that. We can still do gospel, we can still do hymns, we can still do a classical theme, we can still do praise and worship, and African praise if need to, or Latin. You can do that still. There's not, nowhere does it say that in church it has to look like this. The and one thing many don't realize is this whole thinking that in church has to sound and look a certain way. That actually came from one denomination that did that, and of course we know when we, that's where
Right.
it came, how we need to
Right.
act in church, how we need to walk in church. We know that the main church that our Adventist churches talk about in the prophecy, it's
Hmm.
I think it's interesting when we talk most about in prophecy, that it's, the church that changed, when we worship and everything, we still want to worship like them.
Mm.
Like them. Ha, man.
And
Alicia, Alicia.
Mm.
that's something
Mm.
that
Wow.
many people don't realize. When we
Wow.
say only hymns are allowed, only, not to clap. We sing with a serious face. We're not supposed to sing with emotions and all those things. None of it is biblical, because when we look at the Bible, Lamentations is so depressing. You know, we look at the
Mm.
different, Psalms has so all different emotions, from angry to power to I'm depressed, and oh yes, and clapping. It has all sorts of emotions in there. And the one church that said no motion, there's one church that we say to back away from, is the main church
Wow.
that we still holding on to, how we
Wow.
holding on to worshiping like that.
Mercy.
Well, Alicia, I think we can close the show with that. Wow. Because if I start coming on there, we're gonna be here for another hour and a half. Because,
Oh,
man, wow, that is
powerful.
I never thought about that. Never thought about that, but you were right. Absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Wow. And well, I will say this. I saw a video online of our president, GC president, that was discussing how our music should be a certain way in church and what type of music styles we should shy away from. And as you were speaking, all I could hear is those words that he was speaking about how it should be devoid of a lot of instrumentation. It shouldn't be emotional. Music shouldn't have a lot of emotions in it. But wow, yeah, that's
If we
that's some good stuff. We may have to have a program on just that topic.
if we think about look at how if we look at the Bible too, of the different worshipers that
Hmm.
that was highlighted. For example, let's go
Hmm.
to David. That was after God's, he
My
God's
heart,
own
yeah.
heart. Yes, David was not afraid he didn't hold back in his worship. That's one person. He didn't hold back. He danced. He danced so hard. We all know the story that his clothes came off, and he was
Hmm.
criticized.
Hmm.
And that person that criticized him was cursed.
Mm.
And so we understand that God, each time, and that's not the first time. Let's go to Mary Magdalene. I don't think people understand that song. CC one, it says like, you don't know the
Alabaster
cost.
box, yeah.
Because I
Hmm.
see that story is another one of an example of she
Mm.
came and she worshiped Jesus with the tears and wiped it with her hair,
Wow.
and she was
Wow.
criticized the way she worshiped. And what did Jesus tell her
Mm.
when she was criticized? And then we go to the disciples. When the disciples saw these other, so-called disciples doing what that Jesus and his disciples were doing, they were like, "Hey, we need to go and stop them because they're not doing right. They're not, they're not real." And Jesus said, "Leave them alone. You know, just leave them alone," because he knows that when you stop people from worshiping that the way that they know how, you're adding confusion. And that's the problem with our church. We adding so much confusion by saying how we people should worship instead of letting people worship the best way that they know how, and that's with their heart. And then it goes back to the
Right.
Bible that God says to worship Him with spirit, truth, and understanding. That's emotion.
Mm.
That's clapping. That's all. It's it. That's not holding back.
Yes.
You know,
Wow.
and this is and we're still a growing church. Let's go back. So we're new. We're not that old of a church. When you think about it, the Adventist church compared to the other churches, we're the newborn babies. We're the toddlers kind of thing. You know, of the church, and we're still a growing church. We don't know it all, and I think this is where our church needs to study more when it comes to not only worshiping and everything, but there's a lot for us to learn. For us,
Yeah.
there's a lot that we can learn still.
Yeah.
Wow. That's some good
Amen.
stuff.
Amen.
That's some good stuff. Well, one of the things that we would like to do, Alicia, is from our previous podcast, there are certain I guess, ideas or thoughts that we all plan of actions that we want to put in place from each show. So last week we were discussing um, to pay or not to pay, right, within our churches, and there's some ideas that came across. So there's a couple of things that came up, and this is one of the recurring threads and themes. One of the statements was to train and teach our churches to invest into their musicians, back into the musicians. That's one thing that we can do as a community of musicians. And the second thing that kind of stood out was the concept of a musician union, where we can be a support system for each other within our denomination. So we did put out a survey on our Facebook page that would kind of start the process to also put together from the prior week a musician registry, so that we can have all of our musicians in one place, all of our artists in one place for the churches to utilize and to make available to our churches, conferences across the board. And so the survey that we put out is to particularly address those two areas, the musician registry, as well as the establishment of a musician union. So, for those of you who are watching, if you have not done so, please go to our Facebook page and look for that survey to complete the information to us. There have been some responses, but we want to get as many as possible. We want to make sure that we can make this as comprehensive as we can, and also the starting of a musician union. So these are all new things, as far as I know, that we're embarking on as far as the organization of these particular programs. So the bottom line is we can't make it. It's going to be only as successful as the musicians that we have within our network make it. If you don't provide us with information, we can only go so far. So we're here to make ourselves available to do what we can to bring about positive changes for our musicians and also for our church as a whole. Because the truth of the matter is, as we improve the music ministry, so goes the improvement of the church as well.
Yes.
I think, Never, you mentioned there you have not seen, and I haven't seen a church that has a solid music ministry that does not have solid membership and engagement of members in that regard. So we definitely want to continue to be a vessel as God will lead us and allow us to bring about some positive changes. But before we go, Alicia, we would like to you, as of course, as always, if you have any final statements or remarks that you'd like to leave with our audience on today.
You want me to go, or Sister Alicia?
Either one.
Oh, okay. Well, first I want to thank Alicia for coming on and joining us. Prayers up for Hannah as she deals with her situation.
Yes.
And the other guests who weren't able to make it this evening. So I want to shout you out wherever you are, But I want to thank you, Alicia, for being here for this discussion. You have presented us with some wise words. You've educated all of us in such a way that I think it'll make a big difference in all of our lives. I want to thank Thomas for his leadership in these podcast series, and for taking on the ideas and projects. Now, the road ahead will not be easy. We know this, but by God's grace, I believe that together we will be able to make a difference and hopefully, prayerfully, help create the necessary changes that need to occur within our church. Music is a very important part of worship, as we all know. It's not something that we as music ministers should take lightly. So therefore, if we see something that is unjust or anything that could help improve and increase the visibility of our church to spread the good word, to spread the message, I think we have to take it upon ourselves to find the resources to make those changes. So I thank you both for your knowledge and your wisdom and what you have bring forth to this podcast today. And thank you everybody out there for listening as well.
Any words, Alicia?
Yes, I want to say thank you for inviting me as well to be part of this, for having me be part of this podcast as well. It's been an honor to be here with both of you. And Nerva, I always see your posts and what you say. You always bring some wisdom as well. Some are funny and some are right
Yes.
on the point. So I enjoyed that. Word of wisdom. For those who are, leading in the churches, I know it's something that it can be very tiresome. Just anything you're doing for God can be very tiresome. Anytime you're working with other people can be tiresome. And one thing we have to keep in mind to keep praying,
Yes.
keep reading your scriptures every day, and have someone contact, network, somebody, try to get a hold of someone who is also doing what you're doing, that both of you can encourage, someone you can give ideas to, and they can let you guide you as well. It's important that music directors, worship leaders connect with others who are doing what you're doing as well, to keep giving you that, I'll say, gas for you to keep going, and guide you in whatever changes you want to make as well. Because we know that working in this area is so powerful, and the enemy doesn't like it because music is so powerful. It does something to the whole service and to the sermon as
Mhm.
well. It can make it or break it. That's what it does. And so the enemy knows that, and he'll throw anything our way, even one person who doesn't know it may be used by the enemy without malintentions, come to you to try to discourage you. And so that's why we have to keep prayed up, scriptured up, and tied with somebody as well.
Great.
And so that you can keep doing what God chose you to do.
Wow. Alicia, thank you so much. As Nerva said, it's very the knowledge has been. We went to the well today. We drank from the well today. I look at it that way. So, Alicia, again, thank you for what you have given us today. Nerva, is always, brother, good to be here with you. Thank you for this opportunity, for this whole concept for this podcast. Next week, we are going to be discussing the ministry of music versus the performance of music.
That's a good one too.
I cannot wait to hear what
That's a good
what
one.
is going to come of that. So we hope to see all of you, our audience, again. Without you, we wouldn't be here without you. So thank you so much for your support. We pray that you will continue to support and also share this ministry with others. Again, we want to make sure that we are working to bring about a positive change in the music ministry as a whole for our church. So we want to be about our Father's business in that regard, for bringing about the necessary changes that God will have us to do in our various vineyards where we serve, and also be a service to others. So until next week, we look forward to see you here at the same time next week, where we will be discussing music ministry versus music performance. Until then, you all take care. Thank you all again. Alicia, good. Great to see you again, to have you on with
Same
us today.
here. Thank
Uh,
you.
Take care,
Right.
everyone.